Welcome to Dev Ready Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today we're joined by Stephen Wilson Downey. He's the CEO and founder of Ape Technologies, and they're all about automation of WordPress maintenance effectively, and has been developing some pretty cool tech that enables developers out there in the community to get their WordPress systems updated automatically. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks
And
for
it's bright and early, and all the way from Ireland he's joining us from, and it's 2 a.m. at the time of recording, which is very courageous of you. So thanks for coming
thanks for
on.
making that time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Two or three coffees later, and it's not an issue.
It's working out.
Hopefully tomorrow's okay for you.
Oh yeah, I'll have a nice sleep in now before I begin my day. Nothing done if I'm a zombie.
Brilliant. So, in terms of yourself, always love to know a little bit about your background and history and how you got into Ape. So, can you tell us a bit about you and how Ape came about?
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, myself and two co-founders, Dave and Keane, we set up a web development company. And it wasn't too long into the business where we had our biggest customer who had an e-commerce website. And I got a phone call that many business owners would dread. What the hell is going on? I can't process any payments through my website. And that problem took way too long to solve. Keane was around 2 to 3 weeks trawling through thousands of lines of code, and essentially what the issue was, there was a plugin conflict. So it was a WordPress-based website with a WooCommerce integration. So it's the e-commerce functionality to enable to sell on WordPress websites. And there was one component or plugin looking for a comma that was missing in another. So it was literally looking for a needle in a haystack. And while all that was happening, we had new projects being delayed, and a really, really angry customer at the other end. And we eventually solved the problem for the website, but we lost the customer naturally. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I would do the same thing. So I asked Keane, I said, surely there's a way to automate this. And he said, no, I'd be using it by now. So with a bit of research, found that there wasn't anything out there that would suit our needs. So we decided to go and build it ourselves.
That's a big journey. If anyone knows WordPress, there's thousands, even not hundreds of thousands of plugins that exist. You'll have the exact numbers, but anyone that's worked with WordPress, there's so many different developers out in the world. There's millions and millions of sites. I think it's the biggest used CMS, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the most built, the tech stack that most websites are built in, effectively, statistically. So that is a big undertaking.
And if you go to the developer forums, a lot of the people are disable all your plugins one by one, turn them on one by one, and see which one breaks. That's exactly the existing model of trying to figure out what the hell's going on when something goes wrong.
Yeah, and you're right. It was a big undertaking. Like WordPress powers around a third of the internet, and no two WordPress websites are the exact same. There's always a different plugin mix, and you're trying to figure out how they're all going to work together and play nice with one another. That was a huge challenge. Like with comprehending to build a data set of over 55,000 open source plugins and a few thousand more private or closed source plugins. It was unfeasible and unrealistic to take that approach. It would be colossal. And how long would it take to construct something like that? So we really had to think outside the box, and it took us 3 months just to wrap our heads around how we are going to address that problem. Because at the beginning, like I'm not a coder. My technical knowledge is just the the very tip top of the iceberg. But my understanding of it when we were going to build this was the AI was going to be the really hard part, but that turned out to be the easy part. Comprehending, getting that data, and let alone what to do with it, was a huge barrier to breakthrough. So the way we went about it was we built a crawler that was attached to Ape, and that would essentially interact with the WordPress repository, and it was able to determine the old versions and fetch the new versions as well. And that was just one area that we had to look at. And then it was the server resource usage as well. Having Ape being accessible and frictionless to adopt, that was a very, very big objective of ours to fill. Because the way we're doing it is you install Ape as a plugin. And if you're doing that, you do want to make sure that you're as agnostic as possible in terms of what type of server they're using and what kind of hosting service that they're engaged with also. So that was a very, very difficult undertaking. And yeah, it took us 2 years to get to a point where we have something that early adopters could use.
It's a significant piece of work, and probably one of the most technical projects we've had a conversation with on this podcast. A lot of them are solving consumer problems, and this is really a heavy technical problem that you're solving here. From being a non-technical person, obviously you've got technical co-founders. How have you approached the journey? Obviously this journey wouldn't have been smooth. It's a big R&D piece. What does it look like for you? All right, day one took you 3 months to get your head around maybe how you might approach this, but I'm sure the approach has changed over the time too, as you went through new learnings. How have you gone through that process, and how have you kept yourself moving forward?
Yeah, I suppose it's two things really. Number one, it's your team. Having the trust to rely on your team to get you there. And secondly, keeping fuel in the tank, i.e. money in the bank account. And that was my job, to go and make sure that there's funding there to facilitate the development. And that essentially was how we managed to get there, but bootstrapping is certainly a big part of it. You're preserving your runway as much as you can. And for those of you who might not understand what a runway is, it's essentially when you're going to run out of money. And we have a really good infrastructure here in Ireland when it comes to research, development, fundraising. The Irish government, through Enterprise Ireland, has various supports for micro enterprises just starting off at idea stage to really get that step up. And that's where our first 100K came from.
Yeah, that's helpful, and I think a lot across the globe, and a number of different governments have their own schemes to help businesses in Australia. We're similar. We've got an R&D tax incentive scheme, which basically enables businesses that are really in the startup space, that are investing heavily, probably in pre-revenue, to get 45 cents on the dollar back of what they invest into a product. So there are a lot of these schemes that people are looking out there, but it requires, in our country anyway, yours might be a little bit differently in Ireland, but for us it requires something that's technically novel, challenging, that's out of the box, not just building something that's been done before.
Hasn't been done before, and you have to have good record keeping.
Yes.
Yeah. It'd be similar over here. They'd have quite a rigorous criteria to qualify. So, you'd have to demonstrate the problem that you're solving and that there's a valid enough market opportunity there before they'd consider giving you any shape or form of funding.
In trying to keep that runway going and you're keeping funds coming in, was that trying to then do web development projects as well as trying to then build this product? So you
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A big part of it. So we registered Ape as a separate company, and we have Spera then our web development company, and we'd be working away on different web development projects, different design projects, and custom software projects, and that enabled us to keep us fed and watered. And the funding that we had in Ape then was specifically for cloud server costs, and sometimes you'd need some contractors that would have a particular stack of programming languages that you need to bring in to build one or two components of what you're doing. And that's how we've managed to preserve the runway as long as we could. And I think if you can solve that problem of paying yourself, it's one of the biggest problems to solve, because let's be realistic, everybody's got to eat. But the more that you need to draw from the business, the less you're going to get done.
Yeah, and we've seen situations where people are taking on projects or coming up with other avenues to supplement the money that they're investing, like to keep that runway going. But then that consumes too much time, and then they don't actually work on their product. So it's a very fine balancing act, I think, to be able to work on your product and be able to keep the doors open at the same time. Because most people are either going to do one or the other, and the money's going to run out potentially before they even get a chance to build their product properly.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point, Anthony. It's a real balancing act, and I think that the way we approached it was, Ape was a byproduct of what we were doing, and it was a very healthy overlap, because not only were we working on new websites, we were also testing Ape on the new websites we were building as well. And that was a massive part of the debugging process. We had already existing server environments set up as well, and making sure that there's a dedicated person working on Ape at any one time. And that was the best way to do it. When the next version was ready, the developers will pass it back on to the sales side of things, so people can drum up more users to adopt and give us feedback and develop things from there.
It's very lucky that overlap exists. A lot of people we've spoken to is, I've just got an idea, let's just dive all in and start working on it. They don't have that business to build it off. Very few people, it's a tool that's evolved out of their experiences in that business, I think, Andrew, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a rare occurrence, but it does make sense if you're in technology, finding a problem. It is a way to supplement and do it. But I think one of the key things you said was having a dedicated team or person or somebody on the project. I think you can sort of get lost between sucking that resource in and out. We're in a similar mold, but we've got a product in the pharmacy sector in Australia, and we've been just ramping and building a team for that product only. That product's in probably 20% of the Australian pharmacy market. It's growing, but we've just been supplementing it from our core business, which is similar to development business that we've been operating for a number of years now. I won't bore you with that, but similar challenge where you do need dedicated people, otherwise your resources get sucked into other projects and that product lingers and doesn't actually follow through. So I think that's one of the main things that you said there. Dedicated person still rolling with it and actually putting effort and time into the project.
Absolutely. And what is your solution for the pharmacy market? I come from a family of pharmacists.
So we work with a lot of pharmacy groups and marketing groups. So we help them with in-store collateral, in-store marketing, ticketing on shelves, read data out of point-of-sale systems, enabling to remove dead stock out of the store, put tickets on high GP lines, for example, which is gross product. So if anyone's not listening there, so it basically gives people an ability to sort of automate some of the stuff out of the POS systems, because you might dump a POS report or a point of sale report, but people don't know what to do with it. So getting data in the right, or tickets in the right place onto screens, also starting to move into that world as well, and just into socials and promotions is where we sort of come in.
Being able to run like the marketing efforts for the pharmacy.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting solution, because like many pharmacists that are qualifying from college, especially community pharmacists, their first port of call is the patient, doing what's right for the
Correct.
patient, and then they have to think about running a business. And there's many third level courses for a lot of pharmacists out there who would have went to college 20, 30 years ago, and they wouldn't have had any business training whatsoever.
I think they're like everybody else that goes into a small business because it's the category that they're in, right?
Yeah,
They're going to it as an operator, someone doing the stuff in the business, and there's all these other things that support a business. There's sales, there's marketing, there's just the daily operations, the finance pieces, and you can't do everything. And how do we automate parts of this will make it more seamless? Is that's what that product sits in that space. So it just helps them and guides them on that angle. And we're looking to always continue to automate and deliver more value to them at the same time.
that's it. And I think as well, it's really important when you're a business owner as well to see how you can make yourself expendable in the business, where if anything were to happen, or you were needing more time to see what's going on, monitor your KPIs, having that business model get to the point where it's literally running itself and you're just making your tweaks and keeping it ship shape. I think that's a point where a lot of business owners should get to, and like it's a point I'm trying to get to myself. It's a hard place to get to.
It's very
It's
hard.
not an easy place to get to, but I think not everyone has that goal in business. I think some people go into small business and they just work in the business, and it takes you a long time being in business to realize that's not the goal. The goal is to create an operation that can run without you, and it's automated and it's improved and it's adding bigger value. And I think, if you're looking at any business, especially with the tech stack behind it, you're looking to automate this thing so it can grow, evolve, and impact more people. It's not you need to do every single rollout on your own. It's how do we scale this? So every business should be thinking that way, tech or non-tech. That's my thoughts anyway.
Absolutely. Scalability is key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. Technology enables us to do that.
With your unique situation, how you had your own business and you had your own, say, effective beta clients, did you find that it was probably difficult to sell your end clients on what Ape does for them? Because it's not really a problem for them until it's a problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I suppose it was everybody's familiar with the problem, and you'll be right. It's a really boring problem to solve, and the headache only becomes a real headache if something goes wrong. And when we were looking at this a few months ago, actually it was nearly this time last year, we made the mistake of releasing it to 50 beta testers for free, and that was an absolute nightmare. Trying to chase them down for feedback was a very, very onerous task, and we made the decision then to say, look, if we're going to take this seriously and other people are going to take this seriously, we just charge it the way it is right now from the get-go. Early adopter package, it's a competitive rate. They get their first dibs on new features, and they have the opportunity to mold your product to exactly what they need it to be. And that's an approach that's been really working out so far. We just get the common denominator feedback per person, per business owner, and then we realize that this is a feature that is very much so required and will be accepted as a basic in any scenario. And we had to overhaul our user experience and user interface as well. We realized that we built something that looked nice but was also pretty ugly at the same time. Nobody knew what to do when they installed it, or they couldn't figure out, number one, they couldn't determine what Ape was doing, when it was doing it, and how long it was going to be, and secondly, what Ape can do. So that was one of the bigger learnings of the early adopter experience so far.
Yeah, so trying to sell their value proposition in the way they understand it, I guess, and what the product
Absolutely.
can do. I think the important thing that you touched on is when you gave it away for free, the people they didn't have like the ownership related to it, or they weren't taking the lead to give you feedback because they had no investment.
Yes.
That's, I think,
Yeah.
it stems from
There has
that.
to be a value.
Yeah, something for free
Yeah.
doesn't have much value to someone if they're effectively buying insurance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, once you get the paid customers, I think that changes the conversation, and then their expectations of you changes as well.
Absolutely, and they would be very much on point when they're expressing their opinions of what they need and how it should be working and how it should look. But yeah, to further go in on that point and thinking about the value proposition and how we're selling it to people, it's essentially just keeping the conversation centered on the problem and listen to how much pain they're experiencing. And I think the last thing you want to do when you're talking to someone is to jump down their throat with, oh, here's my solution, this is what you should be using, and then spend the next 10 minutes talking about what you're doing. And it's at that point you've lost the customer, because the customer needs to walk themselves through that process and decide that they actually need this and if it's a fit. And if it's not a fit, that's fair enough. If it's not relevant to what they're doing, or I've come across 2 or 3 people that really enjoy website maintenance, and we laughed over it. I think we're mad.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's as you say, everybody runs their business differently and has different priorities and objectives. But scalability, when it comes to that, Ape is very much a piece of software that can help web developers get there.
And your target market is the web developers. It's not the end client, because yes, they can on-sell maintenance, but in this way they're on-selling maintenance, and it's technically automated, which is very interesting. And it's like the insurance policy too, because you've got security patches, I'm imagining, go through this too, or not? Is it just the management of the upgrades of the modules themselves? How does it sort of come together?
Yeah, so it essentially would manage the patching and the updates and implement them in a safe way. So the way it would do it is it would reconstruct the website in its own staging environment, and then implement all the mixes of updates, and it would find the best mix of updates and push the updates to the live website. And whether some plugin versions need to remain where they are or be rolled back to another version, it does all of that to figure out how the website could be at its most functional and secure, because out-of-date plugins and out-of-date components become backdoors to
Yeah, they do. Yeah, especially in this whole WordPress world, it's quite easy to have hackers breaking just because of the backdoors left open without patching. So it is a big problem in the industry that you're solving here.
Most people who have a website aren't aware that there's problems, or not even aware that they even need to update modules and packages.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, there was a security report. It was a WordPress security plugin, and they released a report saying that 63% of WordPress websites are breached due to out-of-date components, and it's a colossal figure. And it just goes to show how much or how many people out there are not implementing
We've
those
done
updates as
WordPress sites, and we've been one of those people. We had our site breached a few years ago. We're trying to figure out where all these random crap pages were coming from and all this other stuff.
Oh yeah, lovely script injections and all that goes with it. Yeah. And it's not fun when it happens, particularly when it's a customer's website and they're calling you saying what's going on, and then they're saying, well, I'm paying you a maintenance retainer and my website's not being maintained. And that brings you into a whole different kettle of fish altogether.
Yeah, it becomes a big challenge for the phone call that you're having, and you lost a client because of it, which is a big problem you found for yourselves, and then created a product. And I think one of the the big pieces from this is that I'm learning is, yeah, we're trying to solve big problems. When we're starting anything new, is there a problem? Is there a big issue? And a lot of people find that it's generally around them or their business that they design a new product, and it's a good thing because you've had the learning experience and you understand it, and you see the impact it could have. So it's a great place to start when you're designing a product to just focus on the problem.
And the other thing you say is that a problem worth solving? Well, you say, Stephen, it's a boring problem. It's definitely worth solving.
100%, yeah. And we're not the only ones aiming to solve this problem. You know, there's other hosting providers that are trying to wrap their heads. Even WordPress themselves are trying to wrap their heads around this issue. And that's the thing. It's the WordPress universe is so diverse and fragmented, and when anybody can integrate anything with the content management system, it's going to lead into a whole world of problems. It's a very, very tough one to solve, but it's well worth going after. I mean, there's one conversation I did have where there was a developer and one prospective customer approached them and said, I need my website updated, and the plugins weren't updated for, I'd say, around 2 years, and the customer couldn't figure out why it was going to cost the same amount of money as a new website to bring their WordPress website up to date, and that's the danger of it. If you're not on top of your updates, the worse it's going to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's a compounding problem. Even as developers, you get surprised with how much work is involved sometimes to do those things.
Yeah, it's very much a hidden problem. You know, there's a lot of customers out there that wouldn't realize that the website needs to be maintained in the first place. And some wouldn't see the value in it until they've experienced a breach themselves.
That sort of thing. It's an insurance thing, right? And it's a conversation that the web developers or the developers should be having with their customers. But sometimes the customer just thinks it's just a waste of money. But once you see the impact, it's like anything. It's insurance. Once something happens, it's too late, and then you think, I should have spent the money getting this thing updated. But that's the reality. Some people are just not going to take it.
It's like servicing your car. It should be treated the same.
Absolutely.
And especially if it's the face of your business, then it's even more important than getting that car maintained, realistically.
Yeah, exactly.
Like your e-commerce customer. I can imagine 2 weeks of lost sales for them, how much that would have impacted their business.
Oh, 100%. Like, and that's it. Like, would you buy and drive a car for 5 years without changing the tires? You know, it's the same thing. And I think a lot of people, when they're getting their website built, they only see the cosmetic side. They don't see what's under the hood, how it all needs to work, and the work that goes into it, particularly past the design stage. They wonder why it's taking so long for the website to reach launch stage, you know. And that's a huge challenge that web developers have to worry about without even thinking about website maintenance.
It's the last thing on their mind, isn't it?
Yeah,
in general.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of Ape, what's the vision? What's the plan? Where do you want to see this thing grow to? Because you obviously first product's out. You've got some beta clients and people using it. Where do you imagine this being in 5 years' time?
Yeah, really good question. So we have identified a few core functionalities that people are looking for that don't exist on the marketplace yet, and that's something we're keeping under the hood right now. But yeah, it's keeping it as server agnostic as possible is definitely one of our top priorities. Making it available on multiple WordPress marketplaces. But what we're doing is we're making sure we have more early adopters under our belt to make sure that they're not looking for anything else new. It's ready to be released to the masses, and people can confidently download, install the plugin, and integrate it into their website without a hitch. But yeah, like we're going into other areas such as automated speed optimization, and search engine optimization also is on the path as well.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, anything that is monotonous and time consuming and
Targeting that.
yeah, it doesn't require um, a, a huge amount of complex thought, that they're just long, strenuous, simple tasks. Those are the kind of tasks that we'd be looking to automate
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
deliver.
The speed optimization makes a lot of sense. If anyone knows anything about a WordPress website, if you add 20, 30 plugins to it, they can get quite slow. Yeah, so that is another big issue in the space. That if you can automate part of that or all of that, that would be quite enjoyed by most of the community, you would imagine.
Yeah, not all developers are created equal. So you get the good ones who know how to write a good plugin versus the ones who learned how to do a Hello World one yesterday and you've just released something crap and just bogs everything down.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the risk of releasing something to a wider audience and doubling down on your sales and marketing too early, because that can be such a distraction. Fundraising and sales and marketing sometimes can be too much of a focus for a lot of businesses, and I get it. You need to drum up demand and things like that, but your reputation and your product offering are much more important, and you need to get that right from step one. Your early adopters, they know that they're using something that's not finished, and they know that their contribution matters, and if it's taking you a while to build in that functionality they really want, they don't mind, because it's already adding value to their website in the first instance. So yeah, there's always this massive rush and this hyper consciousness of the competitive environment. But when it comes to WordPress particularly, it's a big enough market.
It's a
There's
huge market, isn't it? There's plenty of share out there, plenty of
yeah, yeah,
opportunity. Yeah,
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 exactly. And the way we're approaching automated website maintenance is we're approaching it differently. We're not doing it from the server level. We're going in at the granular level, and having it be a part of the website, and have it work symbiotically that way. And I think that is powerful in itself, because developers would have different customers that may want to have websites in their own hosting environments, things like that. And, how are they going to be able to deliver their maintenance if the only way to automate that activity is through the one cloud environment or the one dedicated environment?
yeah. Makes it bigger barrier to entry, doesn't it? Because then you got to migrate everything to one environment. So,
Yeah.
but it makes your challenge a lot harder. If you solve it, then it's a bigger value proposition for everybody in the community. So, one of the things that you said that was quite important there was, yes, we can put a spotlight on ourselves through sales and marketing, but you need to be ready. You need to ensure your product stands up. If you put the spotlight on too early, you're basically just putting a spotlight onto something that may fall over, and that's the last thing you want. If you had 1,000 people on the platform now and said it was ready, what would that look like as a business? How would you maintain, support everyone, and make sure everything's still seamless? I think people want big growth, but they don't understand the implications of big growth. Sometimes you need to be gradual in your growth before you're confident that you can actually 10x this thing in terms of actually your customer base. So yeah, very important point you raised there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raised a very good one there as well, Andrew. Having a rock solid support system in place, like that's the big challenge with growth. Even when you do have a good product, and early on, it means everything. You never know how the customer is going to interact with your product. And we were completely surprised. There was different customers in different geographic areas having a different comprehension of the user experience, how we were wording things, and it needed to be completely overhauled. So, we went back to square one. We had to go back to the wireframes, the user screens, and the only way we were able to do it really was we took inspiration from smartphones. You'd get a brand new smartphone, you power it up for the first time, and what does it do? It walks you through step by step, and it educates you what each function does. And I think that was the only way we could really truly address that problem.
Yeah, the onboarding
Yeah,
is key for any customer, any
it is
product.
important, yeah. In terms of, and I think you raised another point there is don't expect your product to be perfect day one. It's never going to be. It's always going to iterate. And sometimes you do need to scrap and go back and re-engineer and rethink, even when you have a customer base. Because to go from a customer base of 100 to 10,000 might be a completely different product and a way of using it. So you're always rethinking. So yeah, it's one of the
Exactly.
difficult things
And
to do.
yeah, 100%. And I think if you're not in the territory of being told how to improve what you're doing, it really doesn't matter what age or what maturity your business or your product is. If you're not being told how to improve something, then A, you've either lost the customer, or B, what you're offering isn't relevant to what they need anymore. Um, there's always changes in requirements and needs of customers and businesses. And I think that's very true of a lot of the big SaaS software offerings that are out there. There's one big SaaS company which will remain nameless within this podcast, but the one challenge that they'd experienced, and it's one challenge that is very hard for a larger organization to avoid, is the manager of the developer and the designers becomes the customer, and the end customer gets forgotten about in these things. They start building something to impress senior management, and they're building something that senior management really likes, and then the customer is completely forgotten about in that process as well. And having that at the core, I think, is going to be, number one, really important, but also very difficult.
I think that's a challenge at a time where business can go through and get sucked in, because as soon as you lose contact with your customer, you're in trouble, because someone underneath you, smaller business, will come in, really understand that customer and start solving the problems of today. Because the problems of yesterday are no longer the same problems as today. So they're always evolving, always changing, and yeah, we need to be really in contact with our customer and understand the industry, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, because it's always moving. Nothing's the same every day.
Yeah, it keeps the fingers on the pulse, because not only do they tell you what your product needs to do next, but they also tell you about certain gaps or lack of insights around competition on the marketplace as well. I have this other piece of software that's not doing this. Can you build this for me, please? And you literally
That's
get into this territory of you're being told what to build.
Yeah,
And
I think an advantage you have, and I've learned that we have a little bit, is being in the space of building custom stuff at the beginning. You're in a relationship where you're looking to solve the customers, understand their needs, and do everything for them, with them, and continuously evolve the relationship as well as add more value. When you move into product, and if you're only being in product, sometimes you get lost in focusing on the product and let the customer go. So the advantage I see that you have is you've had that consulting solution based mindset. Taking that to product is actually a really good thing. If you stick with a solution based mindset and still develop a product to support that, you'll come from the perspective of this product can always evolve, and it can morph, and it can be different products can evolve based on the customer, not just sticking to the one thing you do and do well. So it gives you that flexibility if you're coming from that perspective, I've found anyway.
And you're solving problems
yeah,
for them, giving them outcomes, not, like you said, Stephen, the managers or what you think is right.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's the root of every business. A business is established to solve the problem for somebody, and problems are changing all the time.
Yeah, which means businesses that probably should be changing all the time as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But earlier, Andrew, you mentioned a very good point about perfecting the product too much, and definitely over engineering is a symptom of a lot of companies that would have a huge focus on tech and a pure focus on product, and saying, we're not going to release this to the market until it's ready. But you don't have to release it to the market in a really, really open sense. You can do it in a very, very bottom up, one by one approach, where you're literally contacting customer by customer by customer and onboarding them that way. Because you have more control over what offering you're constructing. But if something's going wrong, and they need a level of support, you have the resources at hand. Because if your early adopters are paying for it and you're getting your pricing right, that eventually you're going to be able to bring in more resources to help you support those customers.
That's an interesting point there, because most people want to just put their product on a website and hope that people come and pay for it through marketing, but you can't control the size or scale or who onboards. So going at it that way does make a lot of sense, especially in the early days. So I think that's, anyone listening out there, it's a really good point. I think from the perspective of picking your customers or targeting customers manually, so even though it could be a scalable thing, could be a smart place to start, which it seems like what you've done. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think the simple act of uploading something and lots of people downloading it, that's the dream.
Pipe dream.
Whatever else.
I think
Yes.
not many people have managed to live and experience that, and those who have, they've been very lucky on the back of the hard work that they've done. But yeah, like in terms of what people are looking at, and if you're looking at investors now at the moment, everybody seems to be looking for unicorns and things like that. But there's a reason why unicorns are called unicorns. They don't exist. They're myth.
Very rare, don't exist. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I think there's, particularly with startups, I think it's important to not have that as a goal, that you're going to reach that point. I think the way to do it, to me anyway, is just focus on the customers. Because if you've no customers, you've got no business.
Well said.
Stephen, it's well said, and it's been a pleasure. I think we'll get you back on in a year's time. I'd love to hear how things are tracking at Ape.
We'll learn about your journey.
It's been a really, really good conversation in terms of the journey, the philosophy around business, and how you're operating Ape, and some really grounded thoughts in terms of how you might focus on a tech startup and the step-by-step approach, rather than just putting something out there and hoping people come and buy. And then, yes, if they do, can you really manage that? Are you have the ability to support that? So I think it's a really grounded approach that you're taking here, and a really big problem you're trying to solve too. So I think, yes, on the outset, people might not understand this as a big problem, but if you're in the development space, you get that this is a big problem, and the amount of value it could actually add. So really enjoyed your story and thus far. One more question I have for you before you leave. What gets you up at 2 a.m. in the morning to come on a podcast to share your journey? What excites you? Because I think it takes a lot to be a startup business founder, and this is one example. So what gets you out of bed to actually come and do something like this, and every day to get up and just live this journey?
Yeah, it's for me, it's the people part. I just love meeting new people and making relationships, and yeah, it's waking up in the morning not knowing who you're going to meet and what the day is going to be like. No 2 days are the same, and freedom as well. Freedom to not have to sell from a desk, but get out there and just see what other awesome people are out there. and how they're solving problems for their customers in their industries. That's something that just really gives me some buzz.
No, brilliant. No, it's been awesome. Pleasure to meet you as well today. If anyone wants to find out a bit more about Ape, the website address is getaip.ai. Go check it out. Very cool tech that you're up to, and I'm sure if you're looking for some more beta testers, maybe from the listeners out there, might be able to reach out to yourself, Stephen, and ask the question if you want to onboard some more. But yeah, we'll share out the details.
I'll onboard them at 2 a.m. I don't mind. So, yeah.
He's very punctual too, and accountable at 2 a.m. in the morning. I find that quite fascinating. I wouldn't be getting up at 2 a.m. for a podcast, but well done.
Thank you,
guys, it was an absolute pleasure. So thank you, Anthony Landrew, and I wish you a good afternoon / evening. So I'm gonna
and you a good night.
Go back to sleep and enjoy the rest of the morning.
Yes, enjoy. No, thank you. Cheers, mate.
All right, folks. See you. Bye bye.